What if I told you that the first ever multinational corporation was so rich, it was worth more than Apple, Amazon, and Google combined? Yes, you heard that right. Adjusted for inflation, this company's value would be over $8 trillion today. This isn't some fictional company from a movie. This was the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC. In this video, we're going to uncover the incredible story of the most powerful company in history. We'll explore how they amassed such insane wealth, what they traded, the dark side of their power, and why this giant eventually collapsed. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the VOC wasn't just a company. It was a global empire that changed the world forever. So stick around, because you won't believe what they were able to do. Let's start at the beginning. In the year 1602, the Netherlands was a small but ambitious nation. For years, the Portuguese had a monopoly on the incredibly profitable spice trade with Asia. Spices like nutmeg, cloves, and pepper were worth more than their weight in gold in Europe. The Dutch wanted a piece of that action. But individual merchants sailing to the Far East was risky and expensive. Many ships never returned. So the Dutch government came up with a revolutionary idea. They decided to merge all the competing trading companies into one single mega company. This new entity was the Verenigd Oostindische Company, the VOC. But this wasn't just any company. The Dutch government gave the VOC extraordinary powers. They could build forts, sign treaties with foreign rulers, maintain their own private army and navy, and even wage war. Think about that for a second. Can you imagine a company today having its own military and declaring war? The VOC was essentially a state within a state. It was also the first company in the world to issue publicly traded stocks. This meant anyone, from a wealthy merchant to a humble baker, could buy a share of the company and profit from its voyages. This innovation in finance was a game-changer and laid the foundation for modern stock markets. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, where VOC shares were traded, became the financial center of the world. So, with this incredible power and funding, the VOC set its sights on Asia. Their primary goal was to dominate the spice trade, and they were ruthless in achieving it. They sailed to what is now Indonesia, a region known as the Spice Islands. The most valuable spices, nutmeg and mace, grew only on a tiny group of islands called the Banda Islands. The VOC wanted a complete monopoly. At first, they made treaties with the local leaders. But when the Bandanese people tried to trade with the English, the VOC's reaction was brutal. Under the command of a man named Jan Pieterszoon Cohen, the VOC launched a violent conquest. They attacked the islands, destroyed villages, and tragically, a huge portion of the native population was killed or enslaved. The VOC then took over the islands and established massive nutmeg plantations, run with forced labor. This dark episode shows the brutal reality behind the company's immense profits. They secured their monopoly, and the price of nutmeg in Europe skyrocketed. But the human cost was immense. This wasn't an isolated incident. The VOC used its military power across Asia to push out competitors like the Portuguese and the English, and to force local rulers into unfair trade deals. They established a vast network of trading posts, from the Persian Gulf to India to China and all the way to Japan. For a long time, the Dutch were the only Europeans allowed to trade with Japan, giving them exclusive access to Japanese silver, copper, and porcelain. The VOC traded in much more than just spices. They dealt in silk from China, cotton from India, porcelain, tea, and even elephants. Their ships were like floating treasure chests. A single successful voyage could bring back profits of 400% or more. The money flowing back to the Netherlands was staggering. It fueled what is known as the Dutch Golden Age. Cities like Amsterdam flourished, becoming hubs of art, science, and culture. The wealth from the VOC paid for beautiful canal houses, magnificent paintings by artists like Rembrandt and Vermeer, and groundbreaking scientific discoveries. The very fabric of Dutch society was transformed by this global trade. Imagine the logistics of running such an operation. The VOC had hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of employees, and dozens of offices or factories across the globe. It was a massive, complex organization. To manage it all, they created a board of directors called the Heren 17, or the Lords 17. These 17 men, representing different chambers of the VOC across the Netherlands, made all the major decisions. From their meeting rooms in Amsterdam, they controlled a global empire. They decided which goods to trade, where to send their fleets, and when to use force. It was the first true example of a multinational corporation managing a global supply chain. But no empire lasts forever, and the VOC was no exception. By the 18th century, the giant started to stumble. Several factors contributed to its decline. Firstly, corruption became a massive problem. VOC employees stationed far from home were paid relatively low official salaries. Many of them started conducting their own private, illegal trade on the side, lining their own pockets at the company's expense. It became so common that people joked the VOC's name actually stood for Vergen onder corruptie, which means perished by corruption. This widespread corruption slowly ate away at the company's profits from the inside. Secondly, competition grew stronger. The English, in particular, were building their own powerful East India Company. Wars between Britain and the Netherlands in the late 18th century were devastating for the VOC. The British Royal Navy was superior, and they began disrupting Dutch trade routes and capturing their ships and colonies. The VOC's military, once feared, could no longer protect its vast network. The costs of maintaining their forts and armies were spiraling out of control, while their income from trade was shrinking. The spice trade itself also became less profitable as spices became more common in Europe. The final blow came in 1795 when France, under Napoleon, invaded and conquered the Netherlands. The new government, influenced by revolutionary ideas of free trade, saw the VOC's monopoly as outdated and corrupt. The company was drowning in debt. It had gone from being the richest company in the world to being bankrupt. In 1799, after almost 200 years of dominance, the charter of the Dutch East India Company was officially terminated. The Dutch government took over all its debts and its territorial possessions, which would later become the Dutch East Indies and eventually modern-day Indonesia. So, what is the legacy of the VOC? It's complex and controversial. On one hand, the VOC was a pioneer of global trade and modern capitalism. It created the first stock market, developed sophisticated logistics, and connected the world in a way that had never been seen before. Its wealth fueled a golden age of prosperity and culture in the Netherlands. But on the other hand, its legacy is stained with violence, exploitation, and colonialism. The immense wealth was built on the suffering of countless people in Asia. The company's actions reshaped societies, redrew maps, and left scars that are still felt today. The story of the VOC is a powerful reminder that the history of globalization is not just about economics and trade, but also about power, conflict, and the profound human consequences of the quest for profit. It shows how a single company can rise to become more powerful than many nations, changing the course of history before collapsing under its own weight. From its record-breaking wealth to its ultimate downfall, the Dutch East India Company remains one of the most fascinating and important stories in the history of the modern world. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this journey into the world of the VOC as incredible as I did. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more stories from history. What other historical topics would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next one.